Unveiled secrets of our ancient ancestors, 15 mind-blowing truths about primitive humans. Every story begins somewhere, and ours starts in a world untamed, where primitive humans carved their existence from the raw edges of nature. Picture a time before cities, before words, before certainty, over 2 million years ago, when our ancestors first emerged in Africa. In the next documentary, we'll set the stage for a journey through their lives, a tale that unfolds across 15 incredible topics. Get ready to step back in time. Imagine a life shaped by survival, instinct, and the wild. From Homo habilis, the toolmakers, to Neanderthals, the resilient kin of modern humans, these early people laid the groundwork for who we are. Their story isn't just about enduring, it's about ingenuity, community, and the spark of something greater. Their world feels distant, but it's closer than you think. Why care about people from millennia ago? Because their struggles and triumphs echo in us. The tools they crafted, the art they left on cave walls, the bonds they forged, these are the roots of our humanity. This documentary will uncover how they hunted, loved, created, and adapted in ways that still shape our world today. We're diving deep, exploring 15 subtopics that bring their lives to light. You'll see how they mastered fire, transforming their diet and culture. We'll reveal the secrets of their cave art, their migrations, their tools, and even their spiritual beliefs. Each topic is a window into a world that's both alien and familiar. This isn't just history, it's a detective story. We'll piece together clues from fossils, tools, and ancient sites to answer big questions. How did they communicate before modern language? What was daily life like? How did they face challenges we can barely imagine? From icy caves to scorching plains, we'll follow their footsteps. Join us on this journey to the dawn of humanity. Over the next hour, we'll unravel 15 stories that reveal the heart of who we were and who we are. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to come along. Let's step into the past together, because the story of primitive humans is just the beginning. Origins of primitive humans, the emergence of Homo species. Deep in the heart of Africa, over 2 million years ago, our story as humans began. The first Homo species stepped into a wild, untamed world, sparking a journey that would change life on Earth forever. Who were these early ancestors? How did they rise from the shadows of their predecessors? We'll uncover the origins of the Homo species. Welcome to the dawn of humanity. Before Homo species emerged, australopithecines ruled the landscape. Creatures like Lucy, living over 3 million years ago, walked upright, but had small brains and no tools. They survived in a world of predators and harsh climates, foraging for plants and scavenging scraps. Yet something extraordinary was stirring, a shift that would birth the genus Homo and set us on a path to dominate the planet. Around 2.4 million years ago, Homo habilis, the handyman, appeared. With brains about 600 cubic centimeters, larger than their ancestors, 400, they were a leap forward. Their nimble hands crafted stone tools to cut meat and scrape hides. These weren't just rocks, they were the first signs of human ingenuity, giving them an edge in a brutal world. Still, they scavenged more than hunted, living in the shadow of larger predators. Then, around 1.9 million years ago, Homo erectus changed everything. Taller, stronger, with brains up to 900 cubic centimeters. They were a revolution. Their long legs and narrow hips were built for endurance, letting them roam vast distances. They mastered fire, hunted in groups, and spread beyond Africa to Asia and Europe. Homo erectus didn't just survive, they thrived, looking and acting more like us than ever before. What made Homo species different from australopithecines? It wasn't just bigger brains. Homo habilis had flexible hands for precise toolmaking. Homo erectus had a more human-like skeleton, less ape, more modern. Their smaller teeth hinted at cooked food, fueling brain growth. Australopithecines, with heavy jaws and smaller brains, were built for chewing tough plants. Homo species were adapting to think, plan, and conquer. This is just the start of their story. In this documentary, we'll explore 15 subtopics that reveal the brilliance of early Homo species. From their first tools to their mastery of fire, from migrations to mysterious rituals, we'll see how Homo habilis and Homo erectus shaped humanity. Fossils, tools, and ancient sites will guide us, bringing their world to life. Early human survival strategies and adaptations. For the vast majority of human history, our ancestors lived a life intimately tied to the rhythms of the natural world. They were not settlers, but seekers, their existence defined by a daily and seasonal quest for sustenance. This hunter-gatherer lifestyle was not a mere struggle for survival. It was a sophisticated and successful adaptation that required immense knowledge, skill, and social cooperation. The strategies they developed to hunt wild animals, gather plants, and navigate a changing planet were the foundation upon which all human culture was built. Their story is one of resilience, intelligence, and a deep symbiotic connection to their environment. The division of labor within a hunter-gatherer band was a strategic masterpiece of efficiency and risk management. While not rigidly defined, tasks often fell along lines that maximized the group's safety and caloric return. Gathering, primarily undertaken by women, children, and the elderly, was the consistent backbone of the diet. This was not a simple matter of picking berries. It required encyclopedic botanical knowledge passed down through generations. Gatherers could identify hundreds of plant species, knowing exactly which roots were edible, which leaves had medicinal properties, and which mushrooms were deadly. They understood the precise stages of ripeness and the locations of reliable groves and patches. This provided a steady, reliable supply of carbohydrates, fats, and essential nutrients, accounting for the majority of the band's daily food intake. It was a low-risk, high-reward activity that ensured the group never starved, even when hunting failed. Hunting, often the domain of men, was the higher-risk, high-prestige counterpart to gathering. It provided the prized proteins and fats that were crucial for cognitive development and energy. Early hunters were masters of their craft. They employed a stunning array of techniques tailored to specific prey. Persistence hunting, one of the earliest methods, involved tracking an animal like a kudu or wildebeest over many hours or even days in the heat, using superior human endurance to run it to exhaustion. Ambush hunting required incredible patience and stealth, often using natural features like waterholes or narrow game trails. As technology advanced, so did their strategies. The invention of the spear thrower, or otlot, extended their reach and power. Later, the bow and arrow revolutionized hunting, allowing for attacks from a safer distance. Large game hunts were complex, coordinated events requiring precise communication and teamwork to drive a herd of bison over a cliff or into a natural trap. A successful hunt was a cause for major celebration, and the meat was meticulously butchered and shared throughout the band, strengthening social bonds. The very nature of their subsistence meant that hunter-gatherers were inherently nomadic. They could not afford to stay in one location for long. Their movement was not aimless wandering but a deliberate, cyclical migration across a vast but familiar territory. Their home was not a single point on a map, but the entire landscape itself. The decision to move was a calculated one. As they harvested resources in an area, the abundance would naturally decline. They would leave before completely exhausting a region, allowing it to regenerate for when they returned in the following year or season. This demonstrated a profound understanding of ecological sustainability. Their shelters were designed for impermanence, simple huts made of branches, hides, and grass that could be constructed in hours and abandoned without a second thought. This mobility was their greatest asset, allowing them to adapt to local scarcities and follow the bounty of the earth. This nomadic life was dictated by the relentless turn of the seasons. A band's annual migration was a carefully choreographed journey following a seasonal calendar more precise than any written almanac. In the spring, they might move to coastal regions to harvest shellfish and migratory birds. Summer could see them traveling to lush valleys where berries ripened and herds of deer came to graze. Autumn was a critical time for gathering and storing nuts like acorns and walnuts, which provided vital calories through the lean winter months. In winter, bands might break into smaller family units to hunt solitary game or rely on stored food in more protected winter camps. They were astute observers of animal behavior, bird migration patterns, and plant life cycles. They knew when the salmon would begin their run upstream, when the first tubers would be ready to dig, and when the herds would begin their movement across the plains. Their entire culture, their rituals, their stories, their social gatherings was synchronized with this eternal cycle. Perhaps the most remarkable testament to their adaptability was their successful colonization of the entire globe. From the sweltering humidity of equatorial rainforests to the dry, scorching heat of deserts and the frozen, wind-swept landscapes of the Arctic, early humans devised specific strategies to not just survive, but thrive. In the Arctic, they developed sophisticated clothing from sewn caribou hides and invented specialized tools like the toggle-headed harpoon to hunt seals and walruses through ice holes. Desert dwellers possessed incredible knowledge of hidden water sources, tracked scarce game, and foraged for every edible insect and root. In dense jungles, they became experts at navigating the labyrinthine canopy and forest floor. using blow darts tipped with potent toxins to hunt monkeys and birds high above. Each environment presented unique challenges, and their response was a burst of cultural and technological innovation, proving that human ingenuity is our most fundamental survival tool. The success of these survival strategies hinged completely on a third, crucial pillar: complex social structure and the unwavering principle of cooperation. Hunter-gatherers lived in bands, typically consisting of 20 to 50 individuals, most of whom were related by kinship. These bonds were the glue that held their society together. Life was a shared enterprise. Food was not owned by the individual who found it, but was distributed among all members of the group. This practice of sharing, known as reciprocal altruism, was a brilliant insurance policy. It ensured that a successful hunter's family would be fed by others when he failed, and that children, the elderly, and the injured would be cared for, strengthening the group's long-term resilience. This high level of interdependence fostered strong egalitarian values. While individuals could earn great respect as skilled hunters or healers, overt dominance and hoarding of resources were socially discouraged. Decision-making was often achieved through consensus, with the experience of elders valued highly. This way of life was undoubtedly physically demanding and perilous. A sprained ankle, a bad tooth, or a simple infection could become a life-threatening crisis. Periods of hunger were a constant threat, especially during unexpected droughts or harsh winters that disrupted the predictable seasonal patterns. Conflict with other human bands over resources, while likely less common than popularly believed, did occur. Infant mortality was high, and life expectancy was low by modern standards. Yet, evidence suggests that those who survived childhood often lived into their 60s, and that their diet was varied and nutritious, free from many of the diseases of later, sedentary agricultural societies. The constant physical activity and varied diet built strong, lean bodies, and the intellectual challenges of tracking, foraging, and navigating kept their minds sharp. The hunter-gatherer lifestyle was the context in which humanity truly evolved. The cognitive demands of tracking, reading broken twigs, faint footprints, and disturbed dust honed our powers of observation and deduction. The need to coordinate a hunt or communicate the location of a beehive required the development of complex language. Sharing stories around the fire at night forged a shared culture, mythology, and identity. The necessity to plan for a future migration or to remember the location of a water source months later fostered forward thinking and memory. This era, spanning hundreds of thousands of years, shaped our psychology, our social instincts, and our innate connection to the natural world. This period of foraging encompasses over 90% of human history. It is not a brief prelude to agriculture and civilization. It is the fundamental human experience. The shift to farming, which occurred relatively recently, was just a change in strategy. The legacy of our hunter-gatherer past is still deeply embedded within us, in our desire for social connection and fairness, our aptitude for pattern recognition, and even our love for walking through a park or foraging for wild berries. Their story is one of incredible resilience and adaptability, a testament to the fact that humanity's greatest strength has always been its ability to learn, cooperate, and innovate in the face of an ever-changing world. Our earliest ancestors faced a world full of challenges. Their bare hands were not enough to survive. The invention of tools marked a turning point in human history. This revolution began with simple stones and evolved into sophisticated technology. The first chapter of this story is called the Oldowan industry. It emerged over 2.6 million years ago. The primary tool was the simple chopper. Early humans, like Homo habilis, started this process. Creating an Oldowan tool was a breakthrough. It involved selecting a suitable cobblestone. This was the core. They then struck it with another stone, a hammerstone. The goal was to knock off a few sharp flakes. The core itself became a crude tool. We call it a chopper. It had a rough, jagged edge. It was likely used for smashing bone to access marrow. It could also chop tough plant material. The sharp flakes were equally important. They were the first cutting instruments. These small, razor-sharp stones could slice through animal hide. They could cut meat from a carcass. They could sharpen a stick. This was a cognitive leap. It required foresight and planning. They had to imagine the final tool within the raw stone. This simple technology provided a crucial survival advantage. Access to meat and marrow was a game-changer. These calorie-rich foods fueled bigger brains. This nutritional boost may have directly driven our evolution. Tools made us who we are. For nearly 1 million years, Oldowan tools were the height of technology. They spread across Africa. Then, around 1.7 million years ago, something new appeared. This was the Acheulean revolution. This new industry is linked to Homo erectus. This species had a larger brain and a new ambition. Their signature tool was the hand axe. It was a masterpiece of Stone Age engineering. The Acheulean hand axe was a deliberate design. It was often teardrop or oval-shaped. It was bifacial, meaning flakes were removed from both sides. This created a symmetrical and incredibly sharp edge. Making a hand axe was a complex, multi-step process. It required a soft hammer, perhaps made of bone or antler. This allowed for more precise flaking. The maker had to hold a mental template in their mind. The symmetry of the hand axe is fascinating. It goes beyond mere function. It suggests the dawn of aesthetic sense. Perhaps a well-made tool also brought social status. It was a symbol of skill. The uses for these hand axes were vast. They were the Swiss Army knives of the Paleolithic. Their sharp edge was perfect for butchering large game. They could dig for water or roots. They could strip bark or break wood. This improved technology changed how humans interacted with the world. Homo erectus could process food more efficiently. They could exploit new resources in their environment. This toolkit supported their migration out of Africa. Acheulean tools are found across 3 continents. They appear in Africa, Asia, and Europe. This spread shows the incredible success of this technology. It was a design so effective it lasted for over 1 million years. The evolution from Oldowan to Acheulean was slow. It was a gradual refinement of technique. It represents a massive cognitive leap. It shows improved planning and fine motor skills. Toolmaking was a knowledge-based culture. Skills had to be carefully taught and learned. Young individuals would spend years practicing. This was the first form of education. It ensured the survival of knowledge. These tools were not just for getting food. They were used to make other tools. A sharp flake could shape a wooden spear. A hand axe could break a bone to make an oar. Tools begat more tools. This created a feedback loop. Better tools meant better nutrition. Better nutrition supported larger brains. Larger brains could then imagine even better tools. This cycle propelled human evolution. The stone tool revolution was our first step into technology. It was the foundation of all human culture. From these simple rocks, we eventually built cities. We learned to manipulate our world. The legacy of these tools is still with us. The drive to create and improve defines us. We are a species of toolmakers. It all started with a simple stone and a spark of ingenuity. Mastery of fire, a game changer for primitive humans. Imagine a world of absolute darkness. The night was a time of profound danger and fear for early humans. The cold was a constant threat. Then they learned to tame a wild force. The mastery of fire was a true point of no return. This was not about starting fires. That came much later. It was about controlling fire. They learned to capture it from wildfires. They then became its guardian. Keeping a flame alive was a crucial, communal task. Evidence for this exists in ancient places. Wonderwerk Cave in South Africa is one such site. Archaeologists found ash and burned bone deep inside. This suggests a controlled fire. It dates back over 1 million years. Fire provided warmth. This was its most immediate gift. It allowed early humans to survive in colder climates. They could migrate out of Africa. They could endure icy winters. This expanded their world immensely. It also offered a ring of safety. A crackling fire kept predators at bay. Hyenas, lions, and saber-toothed cats feared the flames. For the first time, nights became less terrifying. Sleep became deeper and safer. But its greatest revolution was in food. Fire transformed cooking. Cooking meat made it easier to chew and digest. This unlocked more calories and nutrients. It effectively pre-digested our food. This nutritional boost had profound effects. It may have fueled the growth of our brains. Less energy was needed for digestion. That energy could be diverted to cognitive development. We literally became smarter by cooking. Cooked food was also safer. Heat killed parasites and harmful bacteria. This reduced disease and infection. It likely contributed to longer lifespans. Health and strength improved. The light of the fire extended the day. After sunset, activities did not have to end. Tools could be repaired in the evening. Stories could be told. Social bonds could be strengthened. This was the first hearth. It became the center of social life. People gathered around its warmth and light. They shared food from the day's hunt. They made plans for the next day. Communication evolved around the fire. Complex language may have developed here. Stories were shared and knowledge passed down. Myths and legends were born in the flickering light. Culture was forged in its glow. Fire also became a tool for making tools. They discovered fire could alter materials. Heating stone made it easier to flake and shape. It was used to harden wooden spear points. This improved their hunting technology. The ability to manipulate their environment grew. They could use fire to clear land. This might have been used to drive game during hunts. It could encourage new plant growth. They began to shape the landscape. This knowledge was carefully preserved and taught. Keeping a fire alive was a heavy responsibility. Transferring fire to a new camp was a delicate operation. This required planning and coordination. The psychological impact was immense. Fire provided comfort and a sense of control. It created a defined safe space in a vast unknown world. It was a symbol of home and community. This mastery marked a clear separation from other animals. No other creature could command fire like this. It was a fundamental human breakthrough. It redefined our relationship with nature. From this single discovery, countless innovations followed. It paved the way for later technologies like pottery and metallurgy. The entire journey of human innovation warmed itself by that first ancient flame. The hearth became the heart of the community. It was the first true home. It provided physical warmth and social warmth. It fostered cooperation and shared identity. The control of fire remains a core human skill. It is one of our most fundamental technologies. It all began with that first spark, captured and guarded. It truly lit the path to the modern world. Social structures. Life in small bands and tribes. The earliest humans lived in small, mobile bands. These groups rarely exceeded 20 to 30 individuals. Survival in a harsh world demanded tight social cohesion. Their entire social structure was built around mutual aid. These bands were typically composed of several family units. Kinship was the fundamental bond that held everyone together. Being related fostered a powerful sense of shared purpose and obligation. This familial network was their first line of defense against starvation and danger. Group size was limited by the availability of resources. A band needed to be large enough to defend itself and hunt effectively, yet it had to be small enough to move seasonally and live off the land. The carrying capacity of their environment was the ultimate constraint. The division of labor was primarily based on age and sex. This was a practical, not a political arrangement. Men, generally larger and with greater upper body strength, often took on large game hunting. This was dangerous work requiring coordinated group effort. Women's roles were centered on gathering plant foods, a consistent and reliable nutrition source. This critical work provided the majority of the band's calories. They also cared for the young, processed hides, and managed the domestic camp space. Their knowledge of plants was vast and essential. Older members, no longer able to hunt or gather intensively, played a vital role. They acted as caregivers for young children. They were also the repositories of knowledge, the storytellers and keepers of tradition. Their wisdom guided the group's decisions. Children learned by doing, gradually acquiring the skills they would need as adults. Boys might practice with small spears. Girls would learn to identify edible plants. Play was often a form of training for their future survival roles. Cooperation was not a choice but a necessity. A successful hunt required perfect synchronization among the hunters. Sharing the meat was immediate and expected. A hunter's status came from providing for others, not hoarding for himself. This egalitarianism was a hallmark of many band societies. Resources were shared to ensure no one starved. This created a powerful system of reciprocity. If you gave today, you could receive tomorrow. It was a survival-based insurance policy. Decision-making was often consensus-based. While respected elders or skilled hunters might have more influence, no single person held absolute authority. The goal was group harmony and survival, not the power of an individual. Conflict within the band was dangerous. It could weaken the group and threaten everyone's survival. Social mechanisms, like gossip, mediation, or sharing rituals, evolved to diffuse tensions and maintain balance. Exile was a severe and feared punishment. Their social world was intensely personal. Every individual had a direct relationship with every other. There was no anonymity. Social bonds were forged through a lifetime of shared experience, hardship, and mutual dependence. The band was their whole universe. Interaction with other bands was rare but significant. These encounters might be for trade, to share information, or to find marriage partners. This prevented inbreeding and created alliances. Marriage often served as a bridge between bands. It extended kinship networks and fostered peaceful relations. A person married into another group might become a point of contact and mutual aid in times of scarcity. The concept of private property was limited. Tools, weapons, and personal adornments were individually owned. but land and its resources were collectively shared by the band. No one could claim ownership of a forest or a river. Their technology was simple but effective. Every tool had a purpose, and nothing was wasted. Knowledge of how to make and use these tools was passed down through generations. Innovation was slow but deliberate. Storytelling was the glue of their culture. Myths explained the world and their place within it. Stories preserved history, law, and practical knowledge. They reinforced social norms and celebrated collective values. Spiritual beliefs were deeply intertwined with daily life. They often believed in animism, a worldview where spirits inhabited natural elements. Success in hunting or gathering was seen as a gift from these spirits, requiring respect and gratitude. Rituals were common before hunts or during seasonal changes. These ceremonies were meant to ensure success and placate the forces of nature. They were acts of communal bonding as much as spiritual supplication. Shamans or healers held special roles. They were intermediaries between the physical and spiritual worlds. They used their knowledge of herbs and rituals to treat illness. Their power was derived from perceived spiritual connection. Life was precarious. Infant mortality was high, and lifespans were short. A drought, a bad season, or disease could devastate a band. This constant vulnerability reinforced their cooperative and adaptive behaviors. Despite the hardship, evidence suggests their lives were not solely a struggle. There was time for socializing, storytelling, and art. Creating cave paintings and jewelry implies a capacity for expression beyond mere survival. The band was a resilient social unit. Its flexibility allowed it to adapt to changing environments and climates. This model of small-scale cooperation proved incredibly successful for hundreds of thousands of years. This way of life shaped human psychology. We evolved to seek social connection and to find meaning within a group. The need to belong and to contribute may be a deep echo from our long history living in bands. The transition to larger tribal societies began with new discoveries. The development of agriculture and the domestication of animals were pivotal. This allowed for more sedentary lifestyles and population growth. Tribes were often clusters of bands linked by common language and kinship. They could come together for ceremonies, trade, or collective defense. Leadership became more formalized, though often still based on influence, not force. Compared to bands, tribes could organize larger projects. They could manage resources over a wider area. This required more complex social rules and systems of leadership to maintain order and resolve disputes. The division of labor could become more specialized in tribes. With a more stable food supply, not everyone was needed for direct food production. Some could focus on crafting, trading, or religious duties. Status differences became more pronounced. A skilled warrior or a particularly generous leader might gain higher social standing. However, extreme wealth inequality was still uncommon as values of reciprocity persisted. The concept of collective territory became stronger. A tribe might identify with a specific landscape, defending it from outsiders. This us versus them mentality could lead to conflicts over resources and raids. Despite larger size, kinship remained the core organizing principle. Elaborate systems of clans and lineages defined an individual's place in society. These rules governed marriage, inheritance, and social obligations. Tribal societies developed more elaborate rituals and belief systems. Ceremonial gatherings could unite hundreds of people. These events reinforced tribal identity and shared culture, strengthening social bonds. The evolution from band to tribe was a gradual process. It was a response to new opportunities and challenges. It set the stage for even more complex forms of social organization to come. Both bands and tribes represent humanity's original social blueprint. They were built on face-to-face interaction, deep kinship, and shared purpose. Their legacy remains a fundamental part of our social DNA. Communication and language, the roots of human speech, the origins of human speech, remain one of science's greatest mysteries. Unlike bones or tools, language leaves no direct fossils. We must piece together clues from many different fields of study. Early hominins likely communicated much like other primates. Their calls expressed basic emotions like fear or aggression. Gestures and body language played a central role in their interactions. A simple grunt could signal danger. A facial expression could show submission. This was a closed system of communication. It could not express new or complex ideas. The evolution of bipedalism was a crucial first step. Freeing the hands allowed for more elaborate gesturing. This may have formed the foundation for a more complex communication system. Some theorists argue language began with gestures. Our ancestors might have used a sophisticated form of sign language. This gestural hypothesis suggests speech came later. The mirror neuron system supports this idea. These brain cells fire when we perform an action or see another perform it. They help us understand intention, a key part of communication. Eventually, vocalizations became more important. Using sound allowed for communication without eye contact. It freed the hands for other tasks while speaking. The descent of the larynx created a longer vocal tract. This anatomical change allowed for a greater range of sounds. It was a vital adaptation for clear speech. But this change came with a cost. A lower larynx increases the risk of choking. This suggests the benefit of vocal communication must have been enormous. The development of greater brain size was essential. Areas like Broca's and Wernicke's regions became specialized for language. This neural hardware had to be in place. Toolmaking provides a tantalizing clue. The complex skills needed to shape stone tools required teaching. This likely demanded a more precise form of instruction. Proto-language probably emerged slowly over millennia. It was not full language with complex grammar. It was a simpler system of symbolic sounds and gestures. These early words would have been concrete. They named things like water, lion, or fire. Actions like come or go would have been essential. Grammar may have begun with simple word ordering. Combining two words created a new meaning. Manhunt could mean the man is hunting or that he is being hunted. The social brain hypothesis offers a compelling theory. As group sizes grew, grooming became inefficient. Language allowed for social bonding on a larger scale. Gossip, in essence, became a tool. It helped track who was reliable and who was not. This maintained group cohesion and enforced social norms. Another theory ties language to collective hunting. Coordinating a hunt for large game requires precise planning. Silent gestures only work when everyone is visible. Storytelling may have been a powerful driver. Sharing past experiences and plans for the future is uniquely human. This required a way to narrate events. The mother tongue hypothesis suggests infant cues shaped language. The need to communicate with babies may have spurred melodic symbolic sounds. Did Neanderthals have language? Their hyoid bone was similar to ours. They had a complex tool culture, which suggests some capacity for advanced communication. However, their symbolic art appears less developed than that of Homo sapiens. This implies their language, if it existed, might have been less abstract. The Great Leap Forward around 70,000 years ago is significant. Human culture suddenly became vastly more complex. Many believe this marks the dawn of full modern language. This cognitive revolution allowed for symbolic thought. Words could represent concepts, not just objects. This opened the door to art, religion, and advanced planning. Genetic evidence provides another clue. The FOXP2 gene is linked to speech and language. Modern humans possess a unique variant of this gene. This gene is crucial for fine motor control of the face and mouth. It helps in the rapid, precise movements required for clear speech. Its evolution was a key event. The debate continues between a gradual evolution and a sudden mutation. Did language develop slowly over millions of years? Or was it a rapid transformation caused by a genetic change? The truth likely lies somewhere in the middle. The capacity for language evolved gradually, but it may have reached a tipping point that unlocked its full potential. Gesture never truly disappeared. It remains deeply integrated with our speech. We use our hands naturally to emphasize points and convey meaning. Tone and pitch are also critical parts of language. Prosody conveys emotion and intention beyond the words themselves. This melodic layer is ancient. The first conversations were probably about the immediate present. Discussing what is happening here and now has clear survival value. Later, the ability to discuss the past and imagine the future emerged. This was a monumental cognitive shift. It allowed for learning from history and planning ahead. Language ultimately enabled the transmission of culture. Knowledge could now be passed down through generations. It was no longer limited to what one individual could learn in a lifetime. This created a new form of evolution, cultural evolution. Ideas could now be inherited, refined, and improved upon. This accelerated human progress dramatically. It allowed for the creation of shared myths and beliefs. These stories bonded large groups of people together. They provided a common identity and purpose. From simple gestures to complex grammar, the journey was long. Each small adaptation provided a survival advantage. This cumulative process built the most powerful tool humanity ever invented. Language is the foundation of all human collaboration. It let us coordinate, teach, and build a shared understanding of the world. It is the very root of our species' success. Art and symbolism, cave paintings and early creativity deep within limestone caves, our ancestors left an enduring legacy. Their artwork, preserved in darkness, speaks across millennia. These were not mere doodles or simple decorations. The caves of Chauvet in France are breathtaking. Artists used the natural contours of the rock. They brought the walls to life with stunningly realistic animals. These paintings are incredibly ancient. They date back over 30,000 years. Their sophistication shatters old ideas of primitive cavemen. The techniques were highly advanced. Artists used charcoal and red ochre. They employed shading, perspective, and even motion. In the flickering torchlight, the animals would have seemed to move. This was not a static gallery. It was a dynamic, immersive experience. The subjects are almost always animals. Aurochs, horses, lions, and rhinos tower on the walls. Human figures are rare and often abstract. This was likely more than just art for art's sake. Many theorists believe it held spiritual significance. The caves may have been sacred spaces. Perhaps they were sites for ritual ceremonies. Initiations or hunting magic may have been performed here. The artists were possibly shamans. The act of drawing may have been a form of connection. By capturing the image of the animal, they perhaps sought to capture its spirit. This is known as sympathetic magic. Other caves, like Lascaux, show repeated patterns. Hand stencils are found throughout the world. They are a powerful signature of identity. A hand pressed against the wall, pigment blown around it. It is a direct, physical connection to an individual. It shouts, "I was here." Even older evidence comes from Blombos Cave in South Africa. Here, archaeologists found a small piece of ochre. It was engraved with a cross-hatched pattern. This artifact is about 77,000 years old. It is one of the earliest known abstract designs. It reveals a mind capable of symbolic thought. The pattern served no practical function. It was purely symbolic. It represents a cognitive revolution. This geometric engraving is a precursor to writing. It is a symbol that likely held meaning to its maker. It communicated an idea. Ostrich eggshell beads were also found at Blom. These were carefully drilled and strung. They were early forms of jewelry and personal adornment. Such beads are not just decoration. They convey social information. They can indicate status, group membership, or identity. This is the beginning of culture as we know it. It is the use of symbols to create a social world. It is a uniquely human trait. The Venus figurines are another fascinating expression. These small statues, like the Venus of Willendorf, exaggerate female forms. They emphasize fertility and nourishment. They are some of the earliest known sculptures. They were carved from stone, ivory, or shaped from clay. They were likely totems related to fertility and life. What do all these creations have in common? They point to a modern human mind. They demonstrate abstract thought and symbolism. This is called behavioral modernity. It is the point where we see evidence of complex language, art, and religion. It marks the dawn of human culture. This creativity was not a luxury. It was fundamental to our survival. It strengthened social bonds and shared beliefs. Stories and myths could now be visualized. Knowledge could be transmitted in new ways. A group's identity could be reinforced. The capacity for symbolism changed everything. A simple shape could represent a complex idea. A drawn animal could stand for the entire herd. This cognitive leap allowed for planning and cooperation. It enabled the creation of shared beliefs. It united people beyond immediate kinship. These artists were our intellectual equals. They observed the world with acute clarity. They possessed immense skill and patience. Their work required planning. Pigments had to be mixed. Lamps had to be fashioned to provide light deep underground. The locations were often difficult to access. Reaching the chambers was a perilous journey. This suggests the act was deeply important. We can never fully know their intentions. The true meaning of the paintings is lost to time. We are left with awe and interpretation. They might have been recording their world. They could have been teaching young hunters. The caves may have been their first libraries. The art reveals a deep connection to nature. These people were not separate from their environment. They were intimately aware of every animal they depicted. This creativity defines our species. We are compelled to make marks, to create symbols, to leave a trace. This urge began in those dark, silent caves. It is the foundation of all that followed. Without these first symbols, there would be no writing, no mathematics, no science. It is the root of human civilization. The caves are a portal to a distant past. They remind us that our ancestors were deeply thoughtful. They were not just struggling to survive. They sought to understand their world. They sought to express their place within it. They were, in every sense, human. Neanderthals, our closest primitive cousins. Neanderthals were our closest evolutionary relatives. They evolved in Europe long before Homo sapiens arrived. Their lineage diverged from ours around 600,000 years ago. They were highly adapted to Ice Age Europe's harsh, cold climates. Their bodies were stout and powerfully built. This compact physique helped conserve body heat. Their large noses were another adaptation. They warmed and humidified the dry, frigid air. This protected their lungs from the cold. Neanderthals were not the brutish cavemen of old cartoons. They had large brains, often bigger than our own. They were intelligent and resourceful people. Their tool culture is known as Australopithecines. They were master flint knappers. They created sophisticated stone flakes and hand axes. They used a technique called relied. This involved carefully preparing a stone core. A single strike would then detach a perfect, sharp flake. These tools were essential for survival. They butchered game, scraped hides, and worked wood. They were crucial for processing resources. Neanderthals were apex predators. They hunted large, dangerous game. Mammoths, woolly rhinos, and bison were their prey. Hunting was likely a close-range affair. They probably used thrusting spears rather than throwing them. This required immense courage and strength. Their diet was overwhelmingly meat-based. Chemical analysis of their bones shows this. They were top-level carnivores. Life was physically demanding and dangerous. Many skeletons show evidence of traumatic injuries. These often mirror those of rodeo riders. They also suffered from fractures and strains. This suggests a life of intense physical activity. It was a constant struggle for survival. There is strong evidence they used fire. They needed it for warmth in glacial environments. They also likely used it for cooking. The question of language is fascinating. Their hyoid bone was similar to ours. This suggests they had the physical capacity for speech. Their inner ear bones also indicate an auditory range suited for speech. They probably communicated with a complex language. We will never know its sounds. Perhaps their most human behavior was burying their dead. Several sites show clear evidence of intentional burial. Bodies were placed in carefully dug pits. Some graves include artifacts. A child was buried with a flint tool. A man was found on a bed of flowers. This suggests care for the deceased. It implies a concept of an afterlife or ritual. It is a profound spiritual act. Evidence for symbolism is more debated. They used black manganese dioxide as a pigment. This may have been for body painting or marking objects. Eagle talons have been found at some sites. They show cut marks and were worn smooth. They may have been strung as jewelry. A cave in Spain may hold the oldest known cave paintings. If made by Neanderthals, it rewrites history. It shows complex symbolic thought. They also collected unusual objects. A fossil shell was found far from its source. It had been painted and kept for generations. They lived in small mobile groups. Band sizes were probably similar to modern hunter-gatherers. Social bonds would have been tight. Genetic evidence reveals surprising connections. Our species and Neanderthals interbred. Many people today carry Neanderthal DNA. This interbreeding occurred multiple times. It happened after humans migrated out of Africa. We met and connected with these other humans. They were not a separate, inferior species. They were another kind of human, adapted to their world. They were intelligent and cultured. Their eventual disappearance remains a mystery. Climate change may have played a role. Their habitats shifted rapidly. Competition with Homo sapiens was likely a factor. We may have had slight advantages in social organization, or simply greater numbers. They did not vanish suddenly. They persisted for thousands of years after we arrived. Their end was a slow fading. The last known Neanderthals lived in Gibraltar. They clung on in southern refuges, but eventually, their lineage disappeared. Their legacy, however, lives on inside us. Their genes contributed to our immune systems. They helped us adapt to new environments. Studying Neanderthals holds up a mirror. It helps us understand what makes us uniquely human, and what traits we shared with our cousins. They were resilient survivors for over 300,000 years. They endured severe climatic shifts. They mastered a challenging world. We must discard the outdated image of the grunting brute. They were complex beings with culture and compassion. They deserve our respect and remembrance. They were not a failed experiment. They were a successful human variant. Their story is a vital part of our own deep history. Homo sapiens in the Paleolithic, the rise of modern humans, anatomically modern humans. Homo sapiens emerged in Africa. This occurred around 300,000 years ago. Fossil evidence from Jebel Irhoud, Morocco confirms this timeline. These early humans looked different from their ancestors. They had flatter faces, rounded skulls, and smaller brows. Their bodies were taller and less robust than Neanderthals. For the first 200,000 years, they remained in Africa. They spread across the continent, adapting to diverse environments. They lived in savannas, coasts, and forests. Their initial toolkit was similar to other hominins. They used Middle Stone Age technologies. These included prepared stone cores and lavawa flakes. Around 100,000 years ago, a shift began. Archaeological sites show more complex behavior. Evidence of symbolism and wider social networks appears. The Blombos Cave in South Africa is a key site. Here scientists found engraved ochre and shell beads. These are clear signs of symbolic thought and personal adornment. Why did our ancestors finally leave Africa? Climate change may have been a catalyst. Shifting deserts and greening corridors opened new routes. The first major migration occurred around 60 to 70,000 years ago. A group crossed the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. They entered the Arabian Peninsula. From there they spread along the coastlines. They moved rapidly across southern Asia. They reached Australia by at least 65,000 years ago. Another wave moved into Europe around 45,000 years ago. This brought them into direct contact with Neanderthals. The continent was already occupied. Homo sapiens possessed several key advantages. Their technology was more versatile and efficient. They created specialized tools for different tasks. They developed advanced projectile weapons. Spear throwers, atlators, extended their range and power. This made hunting safer and more effective. Their social networks were larger and more complex. They could trade resources and information over long distances. This provided a buffer in hard times. Art and ritual were highly developed. This strengthened group cohesion and shared identity. It allowed for the transmission of complex ideas. Their language was likely fully modern. It allowed for abstract thought and intricate planning. This facilitated unprecedented levels of cooperation. They were generalists, able to eat a wide variety of foods. They exploited coastal resources like shellfish. They also hunted large game and gathered plants. This dietary flexibility was a huge advantage. It allowed them to thrive in new environments. They were not locked into one ecological niche. When they entered Europe, they encountered Neanderthals. The two species coexisted for thousands of years. There was both competition and interbreeding. The reasons for Neanderthal decline are complex. Climate change and competition were likely factors. Sapiens' superior technology and social organization played a role. Genetic evidence confirms interbreeding occurred. Non-African humans today carry a small amount of Neanderthal DNA. This was a result of those ancient encounters. By around 40,000 years ago, Homo sapiens were the sole remaining hominin. Our species had successfully populated most of the Old World. This set the stage for future exploration. Their journey was a testament to adaptability. They combined innovation with social intelligence. This powerful mix allowed them to conquer the globe. Their art blossomed in Europe. The stunning cave paintings of Chauvet and Lascaux were created. These are masterpieces of observation and skill. They carved intricate figurines from ivory. The Leeuwenmans figurine is a half-human, half-lion statue. It reveals a rich spiritual world. They developed sewing needles from bone. This allowed for the creation of fitted clothing. This was essential for survival in cold climates. They built shelters from mammoth bones and hides. These structures were found across the European plains. They provided warmth and protection from the wind. Their spread was not a single organized migration. It was a slow, wave-like expansion over generations. Groups moved into new territories as populations grew. They reached the far eastern edges of Siberia. From there, they eventually crossed the Bering Land Bridge. They entered the Americas, a whole new world. Everywhere they went, they adapted. They learned to hunt new animals and use new plants. Their culture was flexible and innovative. This period, the Upper Paleolithic, was a creative explosion. It saw an incredible diversification of tools and art. Human culture became increasingly complex. The rise of modern humans is our story. It is a journey of resilience, innovation, and social connection. These traits continue to define our species today. Shelter and settlements. From caves to temporary camps, early humans were highly adaptable nomads. Their shelters reflected the environment and available materials. Safety and protection were the primary concerns. Caves were the most famous Paleolithic homes. They provided instant, strong shelter from the elements. They were natural fortresses against predators. but desirable caves were not everywhere. Many regions lacked suitable limestone formations. Our ancestors could not rely on them alone. Rock shelters were a common alternative. These were shallow overhangs carved by wind or water. They offered a solid back wall and a partial roof. These sites were often chosen with care. They were frequently located near vital resources. A water source and good hunting grounds were essential. In open landscapes, they built their own shelters. These were temporary structures meant for a season. They were designed to be abandoned or reused. The simplest were windbreaks. Branches were leaned against a central support. This created a small area protected from the wind. More complex huts used a framework of wood. Saplings were bent and tied together to form a dome. This created a sturdy underlying structure. They then covered this frame with animal hides. Large skins from mammoths or bison were ideal. This created a waterproof and insulating layer. In colder climates, insulation was critical. They might layer grass or brush beneath the hides. This trapped air and provided warmth. Some groups used mammoth bones for building. These enormous bones formed a rigid framework. Skulls and tusks were incorporated into the walls. The remains of these huts are found across Europe. They testify to a remarkable architectural ingenuity. They were engineered for survival in a frozen world. The choice of location was a science. A site needed good visibility to spot game and threats. It often sat on a slight rise for this reason. Proximity to fresh water was non-negotiable. A river, lake, or spring was always nearby. This was for drinking and attracting animals. South-facing slopes were often preferred. In the northern hemisphere, this maximized sun exposure. It provided warmth and light during the day. The interior of a shelter was a living space. A central hearth was the heart of the home. It provided heat, light, and a place to cook. The floor was often prepared for comfort. They might lay down grasses or furs to sleep on. This insulated them from the cold ground. Shelters were not just for sleeping. They were workshops, kitchens, and social spaces. Tools were made, food was prepared, and stories were told. These camps were not permanent settlements. A band would stay until local resources dwindled. Then they would move on to a new location. They likely had a seasonal round. They knew where to go at different times of the year. This was a migratory life based on ancient knowledge. Some sites were revisited for generations. A favorite cave or a rich fishing spot would draw people back. These places became embedded in their culture. Archaeology reveals the layout of these camps. Debris patterns show activity areas. Toolmaking happened in one spot, butchering in another. The size of the shelter was small. It was designed for a single family unit or a small group. Privacy was a concept for a much later time. The entire band's camp would have several huts. This created a small community circle. Everyone was connected and could look out for one another. Building a shelter was a communal effort. It required cooperation and shared knowledge. Everyone had a role to play in its construction. The portability of their lifestyle was key. Their possessions were few and could be easily carried. This allowed them to follow the food sources. This way of life lasted for millennia. It was a successful adaptation to a changing world. The shelter was a temporary haven in a vast landscape. It provided more than just physical protection. It offered a psychological sense of safety and home. It was a center for family and social life. From caves to makeshift huts, their ingenuity shines. They used the world around them to create safety and comfort. This fundamental need drove innovation and survival. Diet and nutrition. What did primitive humans eat? The Paleolithic diet was incredibly diverse. It was not a single plan but a way of eating. It depended entirely on location and season. Early humans were opportunistic omnivores. They ate whatever was available and nutritious. Survival required flexibility and deep knowledge. The balance of foods varied widely. Some groups relied heavily on large game. Others consumed more plants or seafood. Hunting provided a crucial calorie source. Large animals like mammoths offered immense rewards. A single kill could feed a band for days. But hunting was unpredictable and dangerous. It often required complex coordination. Failure was a constant possibility. Gathering was the consistent backbone of the diet. Women collected nuts, seeds, fruits, and tubers. This provided daily, reliable nutrition. Plant foods offered essential vitamins and fiber. They were the foundation of food security. A bad gathering day was less catastrophic than a failed hunt. Coastal groups had a different experience. Shellfish, fish, and sea mammals were abundant. These resources were rich in fatty acids. The consumption of seafood was vital. It provided omega-3 fatty acids like DHA. This is a critical nutrient for brain development. The shift to a higher quality diet was transformative. More calories from better sources supported larger brains. Brain tissue is incredibly energy expensive. Cooking was a revolutionary development. It likely began with harnessing natural fire. Later, humans learned to create spark. Heat made food safer and easier to digest. It killed parasites and harmful bacteria. It also unlocked more nutrients. Cooked meat provided more accessible energy. Cooked starches and tubers became digestible. This effectively increased the food supply. This nutritional efficiency may have fueled our big brains. It allowed for a reduction in gut size. Energy was redirected to cognitive development. The Paleolithic diet was high in protein. It provided all essential amino acids for muscle and function. Protein promotes satiety and stable energy. It was also high in fiber from diverse plants. This supported a healthy digestive system. Gut bacteria thrived on this variety. Fat intake was different from today's. It came from wild game and seafood. This meant more omega-3s south and less saturated fat. Wild animals are leaner than domesticated ones. Their fat profile is healthier. They contain more polyunsaturated fats. There were no refined sugars or grains. Sweetness came only from seasonal fruit or honey. This was a rare and valuable treat. Salt intake was likely very moderate. It was not added to food in large quantities. It occurred naturally in meat and some plants. This diet was naturally anti-inflammatory. The balance of fats and abundance of plants helped. Chronic modern diseases were likely rare. Dental health provides clues to their diet. Cavities were almost non-existent before agriculture. Their teeth showed heavy wear from fibrous foods. Their bones were strong and dense. Physical activity and nutrition combined for good health. Osteoporosis was likely uncommon. Life was physically demanding. Their calorie needs were far higher than ours today. They consumed a vast amount of nutrients. They faced periods of feast and famine. This cyclical fasting may have provided health benefits. It could have triggered cellular repair processes. The variety was key to their resilience. They ate hundreds of different plant species. This ensured a wide range of micronutrients. Modern attempts to replicate this diet are approximations. We cannot truly recreate the ancient world. Wild foods are vastly different from cultivated ones. Studying their nutrition offers important insights. It shows the power of whole, unprocessed foods. It highlights the dangers of our modern diet. The Paleolithic diet supported a major evolutionary leap. It provided the building blocks for our large brains. It fueled the expansion of humanity across the globe. Clothing and adornments, early fashion and identity, the first clothes were born from necessity. In colder climates, warmth was essential for survival. Animal hides provided the perfect solution. Early humans became skilled processors. They used stone scrapers to clean and soften pelts. This labor-intensive work was vital. A simple hide draped over the shoulders was a start. It offered basic protection from wind and rain. But innovation quickly followed. They learned to cut and shape furs. They used bone awls to punch holes. Sinew from animals acted as thread. This allowed for more fitted garments. Clothes could be tailored for movement. Hoods, pants, and boots were eventually developed. Footwear was a crucial advancement. It protected feet from rough terrain and frostbite. This expanded the range of human migration. But clothing soon became more than utility. It began to communicate information about the wearer. It was an early form of social language. The earliest evidence for adornment is profound. It marks a leap in cognitive development. It shows a concern with identity and appearance. Ostrich eggshell beads are some of the oldest. Found in Africa, they date back 75,000 years. Each tiny bead required hours of work. Shells with drilled holes are common finds. They were strung into necklaces or bracelets. They were worn on the body for others to see. Pigments like red ochre were used on skin. This could have been for ritual or decoration. It was a temporary way to transform oneself. These items had no practical function. Their value was entirely symbolic. They were the first undeniable signs of fashion. Adornments likely signaled group membership. Wearing the same beads created a shared identity. It showed who belonged to the band. They may have indicated personal status. A skilled hunter might wear a special tooth necklace. This displayed his success and prowess. Items could also mark a life stage. Different adornments might be worn after an initiation. They made social roles visible to everyone. Some materials were sourced from far away. This required long-distance trade or travel. Possessing them showed connection and prestige. The choice of object was meaningful. Animal teeth symbolized strength and hunting skill. Feathers might represent speed or spiritual connection. Body modification was also practiced. Scarification and tattooing likely have ancient roots. These were permanent marks of identity. Hairstyling was another form of expression. Hair could be cut, braided, or decorated with ornaments. It was a highly visible canvas. This shift to adornment changed society. It introduced new dimensions of social comparison. It allowed for the expression of individuality. The costly signaling theory applies here. Spending time on beautiful but useless items signals wealth. It shows one has time and resources to spare. Making a single bead was a significant investment. The time could have been spent finding food. Wearing many beads was a display of surplus. This created a new social landscape. Differences between individuals became more visible. Inequality might have begun to emerge. Yet it also fostered creativity and art. It allowed for the development of cultural styles. Groups could express their unique identity. The drive to decorate ourselves is universal. It remains a powerful part of human nature today. It connects us directly to our ancient ancestors. We still use clothing to signal who we are. Our choices reflect our tribe, status, and personality. This ancient language continues to evolve. The earliest fashion was deeply personal. It was about creating a self and presenting it to the world. It was the dawn of identity, rituals, and beliefs. Spiritual life of primitive humans. The spiritual world of early humans is hidden from us. We piece it together from fragments they left behind. Their actions hint at complex beliefs. The strongest evidence comes from how they treated the dead. Neanderthals were among the first to bury their deceased. This was more than just disposing of a body. Bodies were carefully placed in graves. They were often laid in a specific position. Some were curled on their side as if sleeping. Grave goods were sometimes included. A flint tool, a piece of antler, or animal bones. These items were meant for the afterlife. This suggests a concept of a world beyond. Death was not an end, but a transition. It implies belief in a spirit or soul. The use of ochre is another powerful clue. This red pigment was often sprinkled in graves. It symbolized blood, life, and perhaps rebirth. Some caves feel deeply ceremonial. The deepest, most inaccessible chambers were used for art. Reaching them was a difficult and dangerous journey. This was not casual doodling. Painting in total darkness by flickering torchlight was a ritual. It was likely done by a spiritual specialist. The shaman is a recurring figure in theories. This was a person who could bridge the worlds. They interacted with the spirit realm for the group. They might have used trance states, rhythmic drumming, dancing, or even plants-induced visions. In this state, they journeyed to meet animal spirits. The cave paintings could record these visions. The composite creatures, part human, part animal, may be spirit guides. They were powerful beings from another reality. Animism is the oldest belief system. It sees a spirit or life force in everything. A rock, a tree, a river, or a storm could have consciousness. The world was alive and sentient. Humans were not separate from nature, but part of it. They had to maintain a respectful relationship. Hunting was not just a physical act. It was a spiritual exchange. The animal's spirit had to be appeased for giving its life. Rituals before a hunt asked for success. Rituals after thanked the animal's spirit. This ensured the species would return to be hunted again. Some artifacts suggest ritual use. A bone flute found in a cave could have been for ceremony. Music might have called spirits or pleased them. The Venus figurines are enigmatic. Their exaggerated features suggest a focus on fertility. They may have been totems for a successful hunt or birth. Ritual was likely woven into daily life. There was no separation between the sacred and the profane. Spirit was present in every action. Even a simple tool could hold power. A beautifully made spear was not just functional, it might carry the blessing of the spirit of the tree it came from. These beliefs created social cohesion. Shared rituals strengthened group identity. They provided comfort in an unpredictable world. They offered explanations for the unknown. Why did someone die? Why did the hunt fail? Spirituality provided answers and meaning. This was the beginning of religion. It was an attempt to understand humanity's place in the cosmos. It helped navigate the mysteries of life and death. We see the roots of our own search for meaning. Their rituals connect directly to our own. The need to believe is deeply human. Their legacy is in our continued wonder. We still look at the world with a mix of fear and awe. We are their spiritual descendants. Migration and adaptation, colonizing diverse environments. The story of humanity is a story of movement. Our ancestors began in Africa. From there they embarked on an epic journey. They first spread across the African continent. They adapted to savannas, mountains, and coasts. Each environment presented new challenges. Around 60,000 years ago, a group left Africa. They followed coastlines, finding rich marine resources. This route allowed rapid movement. They reached the Arabian Peninsula. Then they turned east into southern Asia. They moved through India and towards Southeast Asia. Australia was a major milestone. Reaching it required crossing open water. This suggests the use of basic watercraft. By 50,000 years ago, humans were in Australia. They adapted to a unique island ecosystem. They became expert hunters of marsupials. Another group turned north into Eurasia. Here, they entered the domain of the Neanderthals. The climate was colder and more demanding. They adapted to the European steppes. They developed new tools for hunting large game. They learned to survive harsh winters. The peak of the last ice age was a barrier. Vast glaciers covered much of the north. Sea levels dropped, exposing new land. This created a land bridge called Beringia. It connected Siberia to Alaska. It was a vast, cold, grassy plain. Humans followed the mammoths and other game. They became experts in Arctic survival. They were crossing from Asia into the Americas. This was the final great continental migration. They moved south along ice-free corridors. They spread into two vast new continents. The Americas offered incredible diversity. Humans adapted to deserts, rainforests, and mountains. They became masters of every biome. In the Arctic, they developed sophisticated technology. They built igloos from snow for shelter. They crafted warm clothing from caribou skins. They invented the kayak for hunting sea mammals. Their culture was perfectly tuned to extreme cold. They thrived where others would perish. In the deserts, adaptation was different. Water was the most precious resource. They developed deep knowledge of waterholes. They learned which plants stored water. They tracked animals that led them to drink. Their survival depended on this wisdom. Tropical rainforests presented another challenge. Food could be scarce and hard to find. They learned to use countless plant species. They developed blowguns for hunting monkeys. They used poisons from frogs and plants. They lived in harmony with a complex ecosystem. Coastal environments provided abundance. Shellfish and fish were reliable resources. This allowed for more settled populations. Some groups became semi-sedentary. They built permanent villages based on marine wealth. This stability fostered cultural complexity. High altitudes were also conquered. The Tibetan Plateau is called the roof of the world. The air is thin and oxygen is scarce. People adapted here genetically. Their bodies evolved to use oxygen more efficiently. This is a stunning example of biological adaptation. The Andes Mountains saw similar ingenuity. People farmed terraces on steep slopes. They domesticated hardy crops like potatoes. Each new environment demanded innovation. Tools, shelters, and social structures changed. Humans showed remarkable flexibility. This was not a planned colonization. It was a slow expansion driven by population growth. Groups moved into empty niches. They carried their culture with them. Languages, stories, and technologies spread. But they also invented new ones along the way. This global migration was a triumph of adaptation. It is a testament to human resilience and ingenuity. We filled the planet through sheer versatility. Our species became the ultimate generalist. We could live anywhere, eat anything, and survive. This adaptability defines us to this day. Legacy of primitive humans, foundations of modern civilization, how the innovations, social structures, and survival strategies of primitive humans laid the groundwork for later Neolithic advancements. The world we live in was built by ancient hands. Our deepest foundations were laid in the Paleolithic era. Their legacy is our modern civilization. The first and greatest innovation was language. It allowed for the sharing of complex ideas. This made cumulative culture possible. Knowledge was no longer lost at death. It could be passed down through generations. Each could build upon the wisdom of the last. Their social structures were the original blueprint. The band was the first community. It was based on kinship and reciprocity. This created a template for cooperation. It established norms of sharing and mutual obligation. These are the roots of ethics and morality. Their tool-making ignited a technological revolution. The first stone flake was the start of a journey. It led to every machine we have today. The mastery of fire was a pivotal moment. It provided warmth, protection, and a way to cook. It literally fueled the growth of our brains. Cooking changed everything. It made food safer and more nutritious. This allowed for the development of larger, more complex societies. Art and symbolism were critical advancements. They allowed for the expression of abstract thought. This is the foundation of religion, philosophy, and science. The first beads were more than decoration, they represented the birth of symbolic communication. This eventually led to writing and mathematics. Their adaptive strategies were brilliantly successful. They learned to live in every environment on Earth. This proved humans could reshape their way of life. This flexibility was key to future farming. It required the same deep observation of nature. It demanded knowledge of plants and animals. The seasonal rounds of hunter-gatherers were a form of planning. They managed resources across a landscape. This foreshadowed agriculture and domestication. Their burial rituals show the dawn of spirituality. They reveal a concern with meaning and the afterlife. This is the origin of all the world's religions. The shaman was the first specialist. They were a bridge between the practical and the spiritual. This foreshadowed priests, scientists, and doctors. The exchange of goods between groups was early trade. It created networks of interaction and alliance. This was the precursor to global commerce. The need to coordinate hunts required leadership. It was likely based on skill and respect, not force. This was the humble beginning of governance. Their extensive knowledge of plants was the first botany. They understood growth cycles and properties. This knowledge made agriculture possible. The genetic adaptation to different environments continues. Lactose tolerance or high altitude, blood are living legacies. Our bodies still carry their solutions. The concept of home was established. A central hearth provided warmth and community. This idea of a settled place is fundamental. The drive to create and adorn is inherently human. We see this in their cave paintings and carved figures. This artistic impulse defines our culture. They passed on a planet ready for change. Their survival strategies were so effective that populations grew. This pressure may have spurred the Neolithic Revolution. The shift to farming was not a sudden break. It was a gradual intensification of existing practices. They were already managing nature. The social norms of sharing became economic systems. The rules for distributing meat became laws. The band became the village, then the city. We are the heirs of their incredible ingenuity. Every aspect of our modern world rests on their ancient foundations. We stand on the shoulders of these first innovators. Their story is not one of primitive struggle. It is a story of profound intelligence and adaptation. They built the world from scratch. We continue their project of creating meaning. We still tell stories, make art, and seek connection. The human journey they began continues with us.